I still personally post every single Instagram post, and I write all of the captions in the app, which is really silly, but it's what works for me because I feel like part of the brand loyalty that we've built has come off of people coming to our website and our Instagram and immediately feeling like they're making a real relationship and connection with humans and not with a brand.
You're listening to the E-Commerce Influence Podcast with Austin Bronner and Andrew Foxwell. If you want honest, transparent, and tangible results that deliver lasting value and revenue, this is your podcast.
You may know Just Uno for pop-ups, but if you haven't checked them out recently, they're a full-blown conversion rate optimization platform. Yes, they've got pop-ups, but also they've got AI product recommendations, exit offers, Facebook Messenger, SMS, capture, and a lot more. Brands like Pure Vita Bracelets, Rothy's, and Movement use Just Uno to capture and nurture their traffic all the way to conversion. I recommend Just Uno to my clients as a top conversion rate optimization tool. Now, you can use AI cross-sells and upsells directly in-page or in-cart with Just Uno Plus for higher average order value. Just Uno Commerce AI takes in your product catalog and then will display smart recommendations based on visitor behavior. If you want to create a seamless experience from offsite all the way to onsite with unified messaging, you got to check out Just Uno. Head over to justuno.com/influence to learn more. That's justuno.com/influence. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the E-Commerce Influence Podcast. My name's Austin Bronner, and I am excited to be here with you guys today. This is a solo interview episode. My co-host, Andrew Foxwell, is taking a break from the podcast today. We'll be back in the future. Today's episode, I am really excited to share with you because it is a little bit different than normal episodes. What I mean by that, it's an interview with a founder, but what the founder is doing is quite unique. And our interview today is with Connie Matisse. She is the CMO and co-founder of East Fork, which, if you've never heard of East Fork before, it is a direct-to-consumer pottery company out of Asheville, North Carolina. Now, they have some incredibly beautiful pieces. They run an incredibly capital-intensive business, and they do it online, direct-to-consumer. Their website's beautiful. Their Instagram is beautiful. She has created a really compelling brand, and they've been doing it for over 10 years. It grew from a small, just her and her boyfriend at the time, creating pottery up till a massive organization with about, I think, 90 employees. And she talks about her journey, what she's learned, what has worked for them. She shares kind of the nitty-gritty details about what it's like to run a business. And I think this episode is great because it'll give you a picture of where you can go. And it'll give you a picture of what it's like to build an organization with 90 people in it. And that can feel really far off if you're sitting here listening and you've got maybe 2 people in your organization or it's just yourself. So I really enjoyed this interview. Connie is really sharp, and I think you guys will enjoy it as well. So welcome, Connie, to the show.
Yeah, thank you. This is fun. Excited to be here.
Yeah, it's been really fun for me to dive in and do a little bit of research. It's funny because I didn't know much about your guys' company until the last week or so. And then as I started to kind of dive in more and more, I realized, wow, you guys have been around for quite some time. It seems like almost 10 years, which in our space is a long time on the internet and building things. It's always interesting to see companies that have, from the outside, outside looking in, it looks like you guys have figured out so much and you guys have a beautiful website and a beautiful process. But I know it's been a very long journey. I would love to hear from you. I've gave kind of an introduction to our listeners, but I'd love to hear kind of your background, a little bit about kind of you and your marketing and business expertise and how you got to where you're at.
Sure. Yeah. Happy to answer that question. We have been around for 10 years, but back in 2009, it was a very different beast. I had been living in New York City, and I was in 2008 during the first economic crisis of our millennialhood, left there because I was suddenly unemployed and moved to Madison County, North Carolina, where I met some guy who had just bought some land out kind of in the middle of nowhere and was setting up a pottery workshop. And that made no sense to me. I had no frame of reference for ceramics, certainly at the scale that he was talking about. But we shacked up, and a couple months later, I was suddenly introduced to this world of North Carolina craft pottery. And so back then it was, one person making, and my husband, Alex, who's now our CEO, making all the work, selling it at craft fairs. I was helping him pug clay and mix glazes. It was a very, just a totally different beast. I was selling to a very small niche market of mostly over 60 collectors who had like their houses filled top to bottom with pottery. And I don't understand how they even, put one more piece in the house. But neither of us had a business background. I was 23. I didn't have any back. I was still bouncing around trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. I thought I was going to be an activist or a writer, work in publishing, or go back to grad school for journalism or something. And then Alex had known since he was like in 6th grade that he wanted to be a potter. And then a friend of ours joined up and became our business partner, who he went to school for painting and French. And so the three of us have learned a lot along the way, but none of us have any formal business background or marketing background.
As often it begins for people, and then the transition happens and you kind of have to learn business. And when you guys started and you were, like you mentioned, kind of just doing your initial selling at farmers markets and small collective places, did you have any idea back then, like a big vision for where you guys wanted to go with the business?
Well, it felt really revolutionary even for two people. So when Alex and John were making pots together, it was honestly kind of unheard of. Like down here in the pottery world, it's always like one person in their workshop. And so the original idea that it was going to be more like an atelier where we would train young potters and like work together in a group of like 12 or 13. But pretty much like the more we thought about it, the more we realized that we were all going to be really bored living that existence, and that the three of us were all really grappling with these bigger global issues and wanted to expand our community and be just in closer relationship with people. And the more we talked, the more we got excited about kind of using our collective skill set to really grow something that was much bigger than ourselves. And then the other big thing is that the apprenticeship model, where how Alex and John learned, they studied with master potters for years and years and years. And they were able to do that because they both came from really privileged backgrounds and had money in the bank account and were able to work for free for however long and still be able to pay their car insurance and all that sort of stuff. And that really wasn't, while it was a really important way for them to learn, we didn't want to replicate that because it shuts a lot of people out from the learning process. So we wanted to figure out how to translate this thing that we loved, which is pottery, to a modern audience. The other thing is that back then we saw all of these like hip, cool people in like Brooklyn and LA doing pottery, and like the Whitney Biennial like did some pottery thing, and like Rachel Comey was having like a holiday pottery thing, and like we were looking at all this pottery and we're like, that stuff's not very good. we know about pottery, but no one thinks North Carolina is cool. And so we started realizing that we had something that we could share with a much broader community, and that we could tell a story around it, and it change the product up so that it could be just fit better into more homes. And the first time we launched this collection that was very different than the traditional North Carolina pottery that we were used to making. And normally we'd have 200, 300 people show up at our workshop. And when we launched the new collection, which is basically the first version of what we make now, nobody showed up. No one cared about it. All of our collectors were like, that's not what I'm interested in. And so it was like 6 months of being like, well, hope they're out there. And then we figured it out, and we're doing fine now.
I'd love to paint a picture of where you guys are at now, because I was reading, I think, an interview with you. And at one point you were mentioning had almost 70 employees now. And maybe it's even, I don't know when this interview was recorded, but after 10 years, what does the business look like now for people on the outside who are trying to kind of grasp how big East Fork has become, and what type of an impact it's starting to have now?
Yeah, for sure. So I think we just hit 90 employees this week. We have 2 brick and mortars, one in Asheville, one in Atlanta. We sell mostly online, mostly direct to consumer. We started selling to industry, which we were really excited about, selling to more restaurants and hotels right before COVID. And obviously that's on pause right now since no restaurants are buying plates. But one day, we still work under one roof. And so we have a warehouse right down the road where we pack and ship, but all the packing and shipping is still done in-house. We basically take our production team, I think, is 50 people now. We take clay from the Southeast and we put it through this big wild machine and we turn it into plates, bowls, mugs, cups, vases, what have you, and sell it all across the country.
You guys really have an incredible website too. When you go on the website, it's very interesting because you don't see pottery or art paired up with a very like slick New York style, New York direct to consumer style website.
Uh-huh.
And so when you go on it, it's like, all right, you guys have clearly a really strong marketing engine and a strong marketing team and a brand vision for it. And it's paired with beautiful pottery that you're normally not being delivered in that way, which is it's really interesting. So it seems like you guys have a very competitive 10 years of work to get to this point. It's got to be very hard for somebody else to just pop up and create a site like this to be able to compete with you guys.
Yeah, and we've really been honing the visuals of our brand for a long time. But I think we have also had an advantage because we didn't just appear on the market. Like we didn't like look for a hole in the market and say like we're going to be a hipster pottery brand and like let's launch a brand that has like a brand guide with like 14 colors that all do that. We never had the pitfalls of like looking like a kind of run of the mill D2C company because the growth was so organic. It was really just me following Alex around with my iPhone when he was making pots by himself, and that slowly developed into a brand that feels both really holistic, but also cohesive. Our photographer Whitney Ott, she was one of the first people to ever photograph us for the Bitter Southerner magazine back when we were very much not a brand, when we were just a pottery company. And when we started to think about taking the brand and marketing side more seriously, we called Whitney up and just asked her if she wanted to move up from Atlanta and be our full-time photographer. She said yes. Our art director actually did our very, very, very first letterpress invite to our kiln sale back in 2009. And now she's our full-time art director. And so we have this really tight-knit group of creative team. But yeah, the marketing, it does look like I think our marketing is amazing. I feel really proud of our team, but like if you compare our marketing budget to other people in our category, it's pretty laughable. So we do a lot with very, very little.
Yeah. What I sense as I was going through, like the feeling that I got was everything is the way that your like style is. It's like raw and relatable, and it matches, at least on Instagram. Like you guys are very involved in the brand personally as well.
Yes.
And that is something that not everybody goes about that way. They'll sometimes keep themselves completely removed.
Oh yeah. No, not us.
What are some of the things that you have learned, both the good and the bad, about keeping yourself in the brand and as a part of like the brand ethos?
Yeah. I mean, I think when I'm the CMO, I oversee lots of people and I have a lot on my plate, but I still personally post every single Instagram post and I write all of the captions in the app, which is really silly, but it's what works for me because I feel like part of the brand loyalty that we've built has come off of people coming to our website and our Instagram and immediately feeling like they're making a real relationship and connection with humans and not with a brand, which gets us into trouble a lot. I mean, now there's several people who help me answer DMs. Obviously, I'm still in there all the time, but I do not personally answer all of them. However, our team is still answering literally every single DM that comes through our inbox, which is a little bit bananas. But people think that they know us really well. They think they know when my children's birthdays are. They like name their children my children's names. Like, and then they have no problem being like, I named my daughter after your daughter. Which I don't, it's a weird place to be. And I obviously grapple all the time with the feeling like eventually I need to pull myself. It's like, I want to decenter myself from the brand a little bit for personal, mental health reasons. And because of the brand isn't just me, it's a team of people now. But I think it's just rare to have a brand that kind of celebrates humanity in all of its forms, instead of just trying to take one tone of voice and be that same voice all the time.
Yeah, it's very interesting to see like the different models the different companies take, and I think the way that you guys have done it, it connects with people more deeply and more richly than you can if you're not taking a more personal stance, right? It's like it's human to human versus brand to human,
Yeah.
which is I think it's very hard to outsource that.
It's definitely hard to outsource it. And I think the danger, I mean, especially in moments like this, is that like it weighs on me that I personally at this point, like eventually I'm going to hire a copywriter. This is not like a sustainable way of running a business. And we're
Yeah,
obviously growing and I can't do this forever, but I worry that because I'm, here we are paying 90 paychecks, but if I make a mistake or if I say something, it's just like a lot of personal accountability.
sure.
And there's something about having like a less centralized brand voice that kind of takes away, I don't know, spreads out the accountability a little bit. So like if a brand doesn't have like a face or a person or an identity because it is already dehumanized, it's easy to love it and then toss it aside if that brand does something that you don't like.
Yeah, it's very interesting just kind of seeing how people have been interacting with brands recently and holding brands accountable and that sort of thing, because it's just a very interesting time. I would love to dive into a little bit about the growth and
Sure.
about
Hmm.
the like management of the team. You mentioned it earlier that Alex was doing pottery and you were taking pictures and
Hmm.
selling it.
Hmm.
Now you've got almost 90 employees.
Hmm.
What are some common misconceptions about running an organization of that
Hmm.
size?
I think it's really important to start to like think about that 10-year, 15-year plan way earlier than you think it should, like than you think you should be doing that, like the doing that mission, vision, and values work. That was work that I continued to back burner because kind of in service of doing the stuff that was immediately presented itself, and Alex was active in trying to get us to sit down and prioritize that work. And had we not done that, we really truly would be totally lost. When we started hiring people, we hadn't yet gone through the very tedious, important work of writing out workplace policies and thinking about every single line of benefits packages and figuring out what it was we wanted to offer to our team, what the boundaries of an employer-employee relationship were for working at East Fork. I mean, 90% of where our brains are living is the health and happiness and safety and financial security of the people who work here. And 10% of it is like getting to think of a, a brand strategy for a launch strategy for a new glaze or something. So the human resources part, like if you want to do this right, you need to start thinking about the type of workplace culture that you want to create and be really intentional about it from day one. I think if we moved into this factory space in 2018. And that was a huge turning point for us because before we'd been working out in a workshop in Madison County, and we all had this very like family feeling, and there was no handbook. And I think that policies are not like the end all be all for creating a workplace culture, but there needs to be a written framework for how you expect your team to come to show up to work. And there needs to be like an agreement that's made between employees that says like, we are all here together with this mission, with this set of values, and we're committing to working to each other and resolving conflicts in this way. And here are all of the ways that we're going to support you if you're having a hard time being able to do the job that you've signed on to do. Like that is 90% of the work of owning a business
Yeah.
for us. Yeah. And it's really hard. It's really hard.
It's also totally different than the skill set that gets you to like the first couple $1 million in sales, right?
Yes.
Like
Yes.
it's it's like a total relearning process.
Yes.
As you guys were going from just selling pottery one off to where you're at now, were there any moments that you guys hit or inflection points that you felt like, wow, like this is really going to take off. I know you told the story about how
Yeah.
you guys launched launched the pottery and there was nobody that showed up because the
Yeah.
typical collectors weren't there. When did you guys actually feel like you had a hit and know that something was possible, like a business like this was possible?
I'm trying to think there once we moved to a Shopify site. It's funny, like looking back at our little like WordPress website that we made by ourselves. It was really, I don't understand how we sold a single thing on that website. But our Squarespace, pretty much once we put some effort into our website, we haven't been in a point where we've had stock on hand in ample quantities that like allowed us to like write a real like put marketing spend behind something. Like we've always, our production has always been trying to catch up with demand for the product. So yeah, when we had like basically been out of stock of mugs for a full 6 months, and we started making them and stockpiling them with the intention of being able to reopen sales for them and then be able to keep up from that point. But once we like last year, we like relaunched our mug and sold out in that day, and it went back into the position of never having enough in stock. And sometimes we'd have 100 on the website, and then one little press hit would happen and it'd be back down to zero. And it's really been like that. Yeah. Every time we like put a new goal in front of ourselves, I from the marketing department get terrified. I'm like, maybe this is the year that I'm going to be the one who's like having a hard time keeping up. Something comes along, like a good press opportunity or something comes along that kind of gets that flywheel rolling again. So there really wasn't one big we made it moment.
Sure. It's just been
Yeah.
a consistent push to keep up with production. I mean, even today I was on the site and everything is pre-order.
Yeah. Yes.
How long has it been like that?
That's just been since the factory shut down in April from COVID. So
Okay.
we had, this year was the year that we were going to be able to become profitable and start developing wholesale relationships and all that fun stuff. But then we had to shut down for a month in April. Obviously, we're looking ahead and thinking about what it's going to look like if we have to shut down again this fall. That seems very
Mm-hmm.
likely. And that was a decision that I made, kind of an executive decision that I made in the middle of the night. And the next day I was like, we're moving to a pre-order model. Cause looking at it, there was just absolutely no way we were going to be able to build stock levels up, to build any sort of strategy around selling. And so we moved to this model in May, right before the factory shut down. We'd been gearing up to launch our spring and summer collection. And that inventory was about halfway made, before we shut down. And so we tried it out. We were like, the pots aren't made yet. We're going to have to make them to order. Here's the spring summer collection. It's going to be potentially months before you get it. See what happens. And people responded really well to that. It didn't seem to hamper the demand at all. And so March ended up being our biggest month in company history.
Wow.
Which was 30% bigger than November of last year. So we figured from that we built strong enough relationships with our customer that we could give it a try. So that's good. That's the plan for the year. Hopefully by Q4 we'll have like a little bit of saleable on hand inventory for holidays. But so far people have been extremely patient and understanding.
It's hilarious sometimes when things come back to just decisions you make in the middle of the night that end up
I know.
having big changes in the business.
Big changes. Yeah. We would have been drowning. There was no other solution.
Sure.
Yeah.
You mentioned profitability and this being the year you guys are planning on getting profitable. How do you guys think about profitability and also about raising money? Is that something that
Yeah.
you guys have done? Is that something what does that process look like for you?
We think about profitability differently depending on what day you ask us. That's definitely been our hardest question to answer as an executive team. We have raised money. Alex and John and I are majority owners of the company, but we have sold quite a bit of it we've done a friends and family and a Series A and a Series B, and then have recently been talking again about what it would look like to take VC. We have been courted heavily by lots of VC firms that have no idea what they're getting into when they get on a phone call with us, because I don't think anyone really understands what like making your own pottery looks like at the scale.
Yes.
it's not a fast return. This is not a business that anyone wants to get into if you're looking to get rich quick. It's a super capitally intensive company. And it turns out that if you're like doing right by the people who work for you, it doesn't leave a whole lot of extra capital for selling it or marketing it or, reinvesting in the business. So anyway, all that to say, we have very big plans for what we would do if we took on VC. That would look like trying to grow into a much the largest ceramics manufacturing company in the country, and working with potentially partners across the country and potentially in other places that with new lines and automated line. Yeah, so there's all sorts of ways that can go, but the pandemic has obviously put a lot of it into question, and we're still trying to figure out what type of business we actually want to build. So it's a hard one for us.
Yeah, no, it's very interesting. I mean, I think a lot of times when I'm talking to like founders, a lot of people that are selling online, the e-commerce space, direct to consumer space, they don't have the same level of like capital investment needed to be able to create some of the products.
Right.
And it's like a double-edged sword because they have competitors flying in at them and they find some arbitrage opportunity, and then boom, they have 15 competitors. They're doing the same thing. And it's like it's a kind of a race to who can market the best.
Totally.
On the flip side, you guys, for somebody to really get involved and try to compete with you at any scale, it's going to take some serious investment and some serious time.
Yeah.
When you guys are looking at this, I mean, it's been 10 years now, and then we're into a really bizarre time, which nobody could really predict with this pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
How have you guys, if anything, changed your leadership style or evolved your leadership style during this time when
Mm-hmm.
it's been really bizarre and strange for everyone, and everyone's going through something at a certain level, no matter who you are?
Yeah, I think that we have gotten maybe more vulnerable with our staff. We've made it through this pandemic as a company better than any business owner could have hoped. Like obviously financials they're crunchy, but cash flow is good. We actually have money in the bank. Like if we were to shut down again, we could continue. We continued paying everyone their full salary, even people who had gotten hired the week we shut down. We paid them their full salary the entire pandemic. There was not a single cost that we cut that had anything to do with our employee safety or security. And I think through that, we were very communicative. Our CFO, John Bigland, is a very smart, very thoughtful guy. His financials are a work of art, but he also was sending daily COVID-19 updates that tracked case count in Buncombe County. It tracked testing sites. We offered testing for all of our employees who participated in protests over the last couple of weeks. We've done everything in our power to make sure people feel and know that they are cared for. And it's brought everyone really close together. And then putting up like a really, really knowing what we can and can't offer to employees. Like there was a time where I was trying to be everyone's therapist and financial advisor and savior. And that was just so problematic. And so now we're just a little bit clearer on what we are and aren't able to offer people.
Diving into that a little bit more, what does your role look like now? We talked a little bit about Instagram, and that's still something that you're still doing. But besides that, what else does your role look like at this point, compared to 5 years ago?
I need to get out of the weeds. Let's see. I'll just think about like this last couple of days. Product development. So we have a product development team. I work really closely with our material sciences team. I'm like the liaison between brand partners and our product development team. So we have two really fun collaborations coming up. I'm one with Samine, which is really exciting. No one knows that yet, from Salt, Acid, Fat, and Heat. And so I'll be
very cool.
Yeah, I'll be like between talking to brands and other businesses, and then like communicating desires back to our product development team. Do a lot of that. I work really closely with our director of operations in launch comms when the products are. I oversee our e-commerce, so I oversee content marketing. I oversee the creative team, so check all visuals and style photographs and give art direction for new products and all that fun stuff. I work with our retail manager for buying the products that are not pottery, make selections, like basically act as like a buyer, though she does all the vendor communication. I oversee our customer care team. And so our customer care director is amazing. And she very rarely needs to come to me for a problem customer, but Obviously, like I troubleshoot them on problematic customers. I work really closely with our people and culture team. Obviously, the executive team right now are in the weeds with workplace policies and always continuing to like try to make the workplace just a better place. And then I'm trying to save more time for activist work and to figure out how to working with DEI specialists. I have a business coach who named Desiree Adaway, who I work with on how to make our own workplace more actively anti-racist, and how do we communicate that both internally and externally. That's where my head has been most of the last couple of weeks. So yeah, it's a little bit of everything. I'd
Sure.
say.
I mean, it's good to hear for people that their business hasn't grown as much, or they're on the path of growth, that like things change, but things don't change in
Yeah.
a certain way, where you're still going to be involved with a lot of different things. I would love to hear a little bit more about partnerships and how that works. You mentioned Samin, who has an incredible name that she can be a first name
Yeah.
person.
Yeah.
But how, because like when you said that, I immediately thought of her. Then I was like, you said salt, fat, acid, heat. Now that I knew exactly who that was.
Yeah.
How does it work connecting with somebody like that and creating a partnership? What have you learned from doing those before, or creating something like this in your business?
Sure. Yeah. I think it's all personal relationships. We do very, very little work with influencers. Like anytime someone sends us a DM and they're like, do you want to collaborate? I'm like, that's not what a collaboration is. I'm not going to send you free stuff for you to take pictures of. With our partnerships have to be deep and they have to be meaningful, and we have to be super values aligned. I mean, we have another collaboration coming with a very recognizable restaurant group, and we've been like slowly developing a relationship with them over the past 3 years. So I take building human relationships or brand relationships the exact same way as I take building human relationships, which is like honest and authentic and slow, and you're not going to be someone's best friend. Obviously, when there's a partnership that requires us to pay someone, we're going to pay people fairly, but there's also, we want to do projects that feel good for everybody involved. We don't, again, like no money. Our marketing department is like not very well funded. And so right now, we're trying not to spend any money with Facebook and Google for the rest of the year. We haven't spent any yet, but we've had some in reserved. And so I'm kind of dipping into that reserve to do more content marketing partnerships with freelance writers who I follow and really love, who maybe aren't getting the gigs that they really should get because they're maybe a little bit more radical, or they're just like less mainstream.
Cool.
That's how I think about that.
Yeah, I like the way that you guys have taken a very just like authentic path to get where you guys have gone. And, you know, it seems like you guys, a lot of the decisions you make have been decisions that are not just because everybody else is doing it, right? Which is, I think, in many ways, a lot of the
Yeah.
ways that businesses choose to
Yeah.
make decisions. It's like, well, let's go best practices and do exactly the same thing that people are doing.
Totally. Totally.
Um, it's funny when you interview people who have built larger businesses. It's often that's not the way that they've built them.
Yeah. Correct.
It's modeled off of something different.
Yeah.
Connie, this has been really, really awesome. It's been a lot of fun talking to you about business and your journey and what you guys are doing, what you guys are excited about and working on. What are things? So for somebody who's listening, what's one thing that has worked well for you,
Hmm.
or has worked well for the business,
Hmm.
that maybe you could share, they could take away and put to use in their own business?
I think that something in line with what you just said about how businesses just like look to either side of them and just do the same thing that person is doing. I think when you're starting a business, it can get really easy to become extremely narrowly focused on one thing, one industry. Your direct competitors, the same people that your direct competitors are marketing to, you listen to the same exact podcast, read exactly the same news articles on exactly the same Lean Lex Slack channel, message boards. Like your the information being given to you becomes so homogenous that it really cuts off any sort of critical thinking or radical thinking. The thing that has informed my approach to business more than anything else is diversifying the content that I consume, listening to thought leaders who are in completely different industries, really tapping into what's happening it just sounds so stupid, but just like, don't be a one-sided, like a one-track mind, boring person who thinks about nothing but your SEO. You have to, obviously your data you have to have a good way to track your data, but you also have to be paying attention to what's happening in the world and like be collecting feedback from people that you're interacting with, and people, like, just be a human.
No, I like
I
it.
don't know. That's my advice.
I feel similarly around my own business in that the most growth I have is usually when I take like a big step back and get out
Yeah.
and start like looking around
Yes.
and seeing, oh wow, this isn't the only way to go about this.
Yes.
Let's find another way that might be a road that's a little bit less traveled, but is the right one for me.
Totally.
Connie, this has been awesome. If anybody's listening and they want to learn more about you and about the business, what's the best place that you would direct them? Is it Instagram? Is it your website?
I mean, yeah, you can find information on the website, but I do think Instagram is where we do the most storytelling, and you can really get to see what happens in the factory. I try to do as much behind the scenes process videos as I can, and right now we've always been focused on this, but right now we're really focusing on how to be a business in a world where radical change is needed. So come to our Instagram account. We're showing lots of resources there, and yeah.
And you also get a masterclass in running Instagram, I think, for a business. So
thank you.
Connie, it's been great. Thank you so much for chatting with me today, and I appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Austin. Take care.
Right, here we go. Well, it don't matter, you got money. You ain't got no soul.
Hey guys, it's Austin. And if you've been loving the podcast, you got to go check out brandgrowthexperts.com. That's where I work one-on-one with my clients to help them build faster growing, more profitable online stores. I've got coaching programs and workshops that we host all over the world. Would love to have you come check it out. If you're a fast growing e-commerce business, or you want to be a fast growing e-commerce business, you got to check it out. That's the spot for you. We go more in depth than we do in the podcast with comprehensive trainings and coaching to help you scale up. Check it out, brandgrowthexperts.com. See you there.